All right. Well, folks, thank you for coming out.
Julie, if your pictures don't show up, just let me know and I'll darken a little further.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Again, my name is Julie Lovett. I am one of the park interpretive rangers at Bull Shoals White River State Park. And a long time ago, they used to call us the naturalist. And somebody in their wisdom changed it to interpreter. I don't know any foreign languages. I get asked that a lot, and I just tell them I speak tree. So, you know, it's just, we all we're kind of supposed to know a little bit about all of the resources. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Supposed to know a little bit about all of the resources in the park. But I think every interpreter across all 52 state parks has their favorite subject. You know, I mean, some will be great birders, some are great at, you know, wildflowers, some are great at tree identification, but we're all masters of none, you know? But this program, the Black Bears, is probably one of my favorite programs. I do it dozens of times during the season. This is the first time, I think, in a while that I've done it for a group such as yours. But I want to back up a little bit. I've told you a little bit about what I do and who we are. I want to tell you a quick story about the Baxter County Historical Society, real quick. When I first came to Bull Shoals State Park in '08, there was a museum, a Marion County Historical Society, run by a guy named Mr. Harper. Was it Bob? Bob Harper. Wonderful, sweet man. And he invited me to come to the little museum they had. It's next to a funeral home in Bull Shoals. So I went, and they had some amazing artifacts, but there was one in particular that I was just going, what is that? And it was, I'm going to tell this because if there are kids here, I wouldn't tell the story. So I said, what is that? It's I have a child.
Yeah.
Where?
Right there.
Oh, well, I'll tell you when to cover your ears. So anyway, in this display, he had a canteen that was wrapped. It looked like it was made of some sort of leather, and it was wrapped in wire with a metal lidded cork that went into the canteen on a chain. And I was like, what is that? And he said it was a canteen that was found when they were excavating underground for the conveyor belt for the construction of the dam. So Mr. Harper passed away, what, David, a couple of years ago? And 2 or 3. All of his, everything that was in that museum went different places. I didn't know he had passed away. But I came to find out that David in Baxter County Historical Society ended up with this canteen. And he and I met, and I was dying to get, it was in Marion County, so I was like, I've got some Baxter County stuff I'll give you for this canteen, which was in Marion County. So we made the trade. This canteen is no worries. This canteen is an oxen testicle that was dried,
to give it up.
which was dried and wrapped in metal with this metal cork. It has an inscription on it, and at the moment I can't remember, but I did Google a couple of the words. One of them means January, and the other one was H-E-R-E-O something. It meant striking or rolling or something like that. But I would not be surprised if that canteen doesn't date back to some early explorers of Arkansas. I know Hernando de Soto was not supposed to be in this area, but I don't know that we know exactly where he went. But it looks a lot, I mean, it's in Spanish. So, you know, I'm thinking Hernando de Soto. Anyway, I had to tell that story that I traded a bunch of Baxter County newspapers for an oxen testicle. Canteen.
Julie, I believe it has a date on it of 1651 on the tag.
Yes, there is a date, yes. So we've, in one of those, so January of 1651, and I couldn't get any further than that.
No, I couldn't.
Yeah. Anyway, again, this program is, like I said, one of my favorites. And it's going to be, the beginning of it's kind of one of those sad stories with a happy ending. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of black bears in Arkansas. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about their amazing physiology. I threw this PowerPoint together yesterday and today, so bear with me on some of the photos. But historically, through early explorers, we estimate that Arkansas had some 50,000 black bears. And we know this through journals from people like a guy named Henry Schoolcraft, who was an ethnologist. He traversed the White River. He was an ethnologist is a studier of cultures. So we all know they were all looking for gold, silver, and whatever, but he said he was studying cultures, Native American cultures. But he wrote in his journal about the mass numbers of wildlife in this territory. I mean, this was pre-Arkansas. You know, pre-1836, when Arkansas became a state. So Hernando de Soto's soldiers wrote about the vast amount of wildlife in Arkansas. I mean, we're talking thousands of heads of elk and deer and beaver. So much so that the Ozarks of this part of the Louisiana Purchase became a tourist attraction way before we became a state. For rich Europeans would travel over here and hunt elk and bison and beaver and bear, and then on into the, you know, into the 18th century, 16th to the 18th century, Arkansas bears were hunted not necessarily for their great tasting meat or their pelts, but they were hunted for what's in this jar.
Oil.
Oil, that's right. This is, a guy from Vermont sent me a half gallon of this 8 years ago. And I mean, I could pass it around, or y'all could come up after this is over. It never goes rancid. And it burns really, really slowly. So bear oil made for the best oil to burn in lanterns. So there's 3 towns in Arkansas that are named after bears. One is Bearden, Arkansas, B-E-A-R-D-E-N, Bearden, Bear Den. And I just went blank on the second, but the third and most important is Oil Trough. And that's where, so there were dozens of rendering plants around Marion, Baxter County, Boone County, and the trappers and hunters would take these bears to the rendering plants, and the fat would be rendered off, rendered down to a solid, packed in, taken to oil trough, packed in white oak, dug out logs, lashed together, and keel boated or ferried down the White River, depending on the time of year, and offloaded at the Mississippi onto larger boats, where this oil lit the lanterns of major cities like St. Louis, Memphis, and New Orleans. So it was a huge business, not unfortunately for the bear population. So from 1600 into the 1800s, we went from approximately 50,000 black bears to, in 1920, we had 50 left. In 1920, the General Assembly, the General Assembly made it illegal to kill black bears. So 30 years go by, and these black bears, these remaining 50 black bears, let me see if I've got a slide where, well, let me move on. This was the remaining population. Can you see that little blue dot? That was the remaining territory of black bears in Arkansas. That's where those 50 bears ended up. So,
Julie, is that the White River National Refuge Area?
yes, it's the White River Wildlife Refuge area, and it's a swamp. And there, those bears den up differently. We'll talk about that in a minute. They den up differently than they do in the Ozarks. So in 1956, by 1956, all the agencies had been formed. Parks were formed in 1932. Game and Fish was formed. The Nature Conservancy. So all of these agencies got together and said, let's reintroduce black bears to Arkansas. So we traded northern Minnesota and Manitoba, Canada, wild turkey for 254 black bears. And I'm not sure, and so this was done in like 1956. So in 1956, we brought the first wave of black bears down. I think I have a shot. That's how we were doing it.
Poor bears.
We were bringing them down. They didn't bring all 254 down. They brought them in waves, maybe 30, 40 at a time. And after that first year, the Game and Fish, the bear biologists, went and checked the areas where they were released, and they were all gone. They all went back to northern Minnesota and Manitoba, Canada. So the biologists are scratching their heads and they're going, what do we do now? You got to remember, this is 1956. By the way, that was the year I was born. So, they're scratching their heads. They didn't know what to do. And they finally, science was not perfect then. It's not now, but they said, their homing instinct. It's a 21-hour car ride from here to northern Minnesota. And those bears went back, and back to Manitoba, Canada. And they had our turkey. So some brilliant biologist said, why don't we bring females with cubs? And they did, and they stayed. Because a mother bear's, her mothering instinct is way greater than her homing instinct. We've all heard the saying, I'm going to protect my child like a mama bear, and that is so true. And they knew, those females knew that their cubs could not make a journey of months. I don't know how long it took them. For us, it's a 21-hour car ride, but months to get back to Minnesota and Manitoba, Canada. So the reintroduction was a success. Actually, it was such a success that in 1980, Arkansas Game and Fish had to open up a bear hunting season. This is the distribution of black bears today. Well, actually, I probably took this shot years ago. You can see how grainy it is. But we keep the population, I say we, the agencies keep the population at around 5,000. We don't have habitat for more than 5,000 bears. Actually, our bears now are going into northern Missouri, southern Missouri, northern Louisiana, Oklahoma. It's a real problem because they don't have management programs. But those 5,000 bears, there's about 3,500 in the Ozarks and the Ouachitas, and about 1,500 the descendants of those remaining 40 true Arkansas black bears are now up to about 1,500. And they're presently being moved to an area in southwest Arkansas called Felsenthal. So, to spread the distribution. Questions so far? Anything about the history, the distribution, it's one of those stories it's a sad story to go from 50,000 of something to 50, but this was the largest reintroduction of a large carnivore ever done in the world, not just in Arkansas. As far as we know, nobody in the world has ever introduced a 500-pound carnivore back into the wild with this much success. Yes?
Since I live in Baxter County, I'm curious as to how many of that 5,000 are in this area.
Wow, ooh, that's a good question. And we'll get to a little bit about their physiology in a bit, but their range, a male's range, can be 100 square miles. And that will be his territory. And then when you get, a yearling male or female that has to, or especially the male, has to leave its mother and sisters after that first full year, after she's taught them how to, I'm getting ahead of myself, but how to hunt and forage for food, and he has to leave his sisters and family. He may wander into anywhere. He may travel hundreds and hundreds of miles to go to find his own territory. A female's territory is much smaller, about 35 square miles. So, but anyway, I kind of got ahead of myself. To answer your question, I do not know by county. The bear hunting is done by zones, and it may consist of 3 counties, and there may be 300 bears in that zone that can be taken that year. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a second. Yes?
How are the bears tracked? Are they tagged, or how do you number them? How do you keep up with them?
Yes, the biologist, well, number one, through their dens, and I don't know if I think I put some denning pictures in here, I'm not sure. Through their dens, they check them every year. So, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but they keep up with the cubs, and that determines the hunt, the harvest, which is in the fall. So they keep up with them. They know approximately how many bears are in each zone. And again, a zone may consist of, these like 5 counties right here. And there may be 100 bears that can be taken in those 5. If you call, though, it's an allotment. You call and there's no bears left to be taken, you've got to find another zone. And the zones extend over into here. The bear population this is an old picture I took from a really old PowerPoint. It's over in here now. So let me talk to you a little bit more about their physiology. So I told you the history of bears in Arkansas, a little bit about their physiology. I just listened a few weeks ago to a guy named Brad Joseph came to talk to the North Central Arkansas master naturalist about bears of the world. And I didn't get to hear his part about Arkansas black bears, but so in North America, there's only 3 types of bears: black bears, brown bears, and polar bears. Brown bears are typically called grizzly bears because as they mature, their outer coat turns grizzled, which means gray. So a grizzly bear is a brown bear. Black bears inhabit all of, western United States, eastern United States, the eastern seaboard, and then you'll see Arkansas right there in kind of the middle of the country as having black bears. And they're also all along the Canadian border. So, but black bears differ with brown bears a lot. Brown bears and polar bears are more closely related, genetically wise, and than black bears. Black bears have this Romanesque kind of profile, and I'm going to get this hide and show you. So this is a black bear. We're going to talk about the color of it in a minute, but it has that Romanesque kind of nose right there, and a brown bear will have a flat forehead, and I'll show you in a minute, and his nose comes out like this. There's also a big difference in the weight, the size, and a lot of other features that brown bears have over black bears. But so a brown bear has a big shoulder hump right here. A black bear does not. It has larger ears than a brown bear. Brown bears and polar bears need to stay warm. When you go outside, what's one of the first things that gets cold on you are your ears. So they don't need to worry about it as much as polar bears. Polar bears have little tiny ears, where brown bears, they're a little bit bigger, but black bears' ears look like Mickey Mouse. They're huge, comparatively. Shorter curved claws, where a brown bear will have really long claws before they start that curve. And this is the difference here. See the shoulder hump, the kind of flatter forehead and nose protrudes out, sloped profile, smaller ears for its body size, and longer straight claws. Look at those things. This thing can weigh an easy 1,000 pounds more than a black bear. A big black bear is about 500 pounds. That's big. Female, about 250. So, and again, the babies kind of grow into their ears, if that makes sense. I'm gonna fast forward real quick. Look, these are babies. See how big their ears are? So as they mature and their head widens out, those ears look a little bit smaller, but they're still huge. And this is the difference in a young, that's a yearling or more, and an older, mature black bear. And I'm going to leave it there for a second while I kind of get my train of thought back. I've jumped around so much. Again, their physiology is incredible. Their sense of smell, there's an old Native American saying that if a pine needle fell in the forest, an eagle saw it, an owl heard it, and a bear smelled it. A bear can smell 10,000 times better than you and I. So they can smell carrion up to a mile away. You know, somebody's hit a deer that's died on the side of the road. And I'm going to tell you, bears, black bears, are basically, they're omnivorous, which means they eat both meat and plants, but they get most of their protein not from big animals or hunting something down and killing it and eating it, but from insects. And I'll tell you how they do that in a second, but they're just too lazy to hunt a deer down and kill it and eat it. I mean, they might take an older wounded deer or a young fawn if they see one or find one, but it's gonna burn too much fat, and they depend on the fat. They've got to have that fat, and it's gonna burn too much energy and too much fat to chase something down and kill it and eat it. Although at a sprint, they can run 30 miles an hour. The fastest human on the planet can run 24 miles an hour. So, and we'll talk about what to do if you encounter one.
Don't run.
You don't run. But their physiology, which is amazing. And when I first got into parks, one of my big questions was, how does something with teeth like this, and those big canines there, how does it get enough, and how does it eat insects? I mean, you know, and honeycomb. I mean, you know, we're all raised with the, you know, Yogi Bear and Boo Boo going and, you know, pulling the honeycomb out of the tree and living in a cave. Well, they have a prehensile tongue. Prehensile means to grab, just like a possum's tail. So a black bear will rip open a dead log, and inside that dead log is roly-polies and the, you know, bark beetles and, you know, grub worms, and they can take it. And I don't know, have y'all ever seen a bear's tongue come out of its mouth? It comes out of its mouth like this far. They have a huge, long tongue. They'll break that log open and just, I mean, in a New York second, eat every grub worm and bark beetle and roly-poly inside that dead log. They'll go up to a wild raspberry thicket, peel their lips back, and, you know, I've seen wild raspberry thickets down by the Buffalo, you know, cover a whole hillside, you know, in a good year. And they peel those lips back, and they can just take that tongue and they'll just browse on that and totally wipe out those wild raspberries or blackberries. So they get most of their protein from insects, not from, you know, hunting something down, killing it, and eating it, although they will do that. You know, again, just their physiology, the sense of smell, are just incredible animals. You know, I do this so much in the park, but I never do it with a PowerPoint. I always do it with the props. But anyway, we'll talk about, so I brought you up here a phase, a cinnamon phase bear. So the black bears in Arkansas can be black, they can be black, brown or blonde, and this is a cinnamon phase. And sometimes, I thought one of these shots, they'll have this white kind of almost necklace around their neck and a white patch on their chest. So those are the phases, but they're all still black bears. where brown bears don't have phases. And they're born like this and they stay like this. I think I showed you right here. This is a leucistic black bear. It's not albino, it's just missing the melatonin. But typically, they're all gonna be this, black, brown, or cinnamon phase. In the visitor center, we have a brown phase bear, and I welcome you after this is over to come up here. There's a black phase and a cinnamon phase, and a print, a replica of a bear pad, and I'll put the skull back over there so you can see in their nostrils, the nerve endings for their sense of smell. There's thousands of nerve endings in here that enable them to pick up scents. So when a bear stands, you see in the nature shows or whatever, it's not standing up to see better, because bears are nearsighted, very, very nearsighted. So they can see close up really, really well, but far away, they cannot see very well. So that's going to bring to question, what do you do, or this helps you, and what do you do if you were to encounter a black bear on a hiking trail? Anybody know?
You get down low.
Make yourself big.
Make yourself big. Get there. Well, I'm going to tell you, I got to tell you a real quick story. I had a school group, and by the way, guys, I have no idea how much time. 10 more minutes? What?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
you
about 7.
you can go till 7:30 if you want.
Yeah, well-
We can go to 20 after 7.
Well, we'll see how that goes. I don't know that I have that much information for you. Where was I?
Encountering the bear.
Yeah, encountering a black bear. So, I got to tell you a quick story. A long time ago, the rumors spread about play dead, right? We've all heard that, play dead. Don't play dead with a black bear. And I think I know where that came from, is a grizzly bear, it's going to eat you and kill you. But if you play dead, it might, being the key word there, it might throw you down, cover you up with some leaves, and come back and eat you later. So playing dead, and I'm not joking about this.
They can't smell the difference?
Huh?
They can't smell the difference between whether you're dead or alive?
Nah, I doubt it. I don't know. I don't know if I could play dead, number one. But anyway, I had 100 kids at the park. It was a field trip. And I asked the question, what do you do if you encounter a black bear? This little boy's hand shot up. I just knew he knew the answer. And I called on him. And he said, you stop, drop, and roll. I was like, I didn't want to laugh at the little boy, but I was like, I think that's what you do when you catch on fire. But I think he was going for the play dead thing, but he just got it a little off. But somebody said it right. What you do is you make yourself look bigger, because the bear is nearsighted. Let's say that, we're hiking on a trail down by the buffalo, and you round a bend, and off in a meadow, you see a black bear and with cubs, a female with cubs. That's when they're, number one, the most dangerous, those and males who are defending their territory or hungry. So you see that off in the distance. If you're with a group, you join hands, you spread your legs. If you've got a jacket on, you open it up, because all of a sudden that bear that can't see very well is looking at you going, oh, that's bigger than I thought it was. And if there's 3 or 4 of you, all of a sudden you're much bigger than it thought you were. You don't make eye contact. That's a threat to any wild animal, but you don't take your eyes off of it either. So the thing to do is to kind of look down, but keep your eye on it, and slowly back up. Slowly back up while still having your hands raised. And they say to talk. I don't know if that's to keep you calm or keep you, but don't scream, don't run. If you do, it triggers that, fight or flight instinct, and the bear will chase you. And I'm going to tell you, I've done this for a long time, and I keep up. I get emails from U.S. Fish and Wildlife or different agencies, and I read different, wildlife magazines, and I have not, in the last 10 years, heard of but maybe 5 deaths in the United States by black bears, but last year I heard of 3. Just last year. One was an email from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, one was on the national news, and another attack, but not a death, was in Colorado. The one young man, or 3 young men hiking in upstate New York, and a bear started following them, and they were eating. Big mistake, don't eat while you're hiking. Keep your stuff and if you're in bear country, you need to keep your stuff in a really, they can smell your power bar in your backpack. I mean, I've been on trips, we bear bag our food. Out west, you have to have a canister that is, airtight, and they can't supposedly smell through that. But, keep your food sealed up in Ziplocs, and don't be eating while you're hiking. Well, these 3 young men were hiking, and the bear kept getting eaten, and chips and power bars, and the bear kept getting closer and closer, and they panicked and ran all different directions. And the bear got one of the young men, and by the time they were in upstate New York, by the time they got out of this wilderness area and got help and got back, the bear was still there circling the young man, and he had killed him and had been feeding on him. The second and third death were in Alaska last year. It was a couple. I don't know the circumstances of that, but 2 people were killed in Alaska last year. And then in Colorado last year, a group of campers, children, were in tents, and the counselors were sleeping out in the open in sleeping bags around a bonfire, and a black bear came into the camp and grabbed one of the counselors by the head and drug him out of the camp. And I saw that on the news. The guy had 4 puncture holes, from these canines, where the bear just grabbed him by the head and he fought and wrestled and got away. So anyway, it's rare, really, really rare, and nothing that you should really, 9 times out of probably 1,000, the bear is gonna smell you coming and run the other way. But on that day when the wind is blowing at you and the bear is in front of you, you make yourself look bigger, you talk quietly, don't make eye contact, and slowly back away. So that's what you do if you're attacked, because they're just super, super nearsighted. And don't stop, drop, and roll. That doesn't work. I think the rest of these are just photos. I'm going the wrong way. Isn't that adorable? I do a night sounds program where I play the sound and I make the audience guess, and then I show them the picture, and I have this picture in there. Bears make the neatest sounds, and again, they are not true hibernators. They are lethargic. They will create a fecal plug. They don't urinate, defecate for the year. They do not den up in caves. They will dig holes under a large boulder or sometimes even just a brush pile big enough for them and to get in. And it may be under a crevice. I had some shots, but they were in a magazine, and I didn't think I could photograph it from my phone and put it on here, of some of the biologists going to the dens. And this is how we manage, how Game and Fish manages the bear population. They will go in and tranquilize the female, and they have to do this by the end of March, maybe the first week in April, to be able to handle the cubs, which by then they're about 3 to 5 pounds each. If they get over 5 pounds, 4 or 5 pounds, the biologist can't handle them. The little cubs will claw and bite them. So the count or the survey of the bears by all of the biologists and all the volunteers that do this has to be done by, say, the second week in April, no later, because by the end of April, they are too big to handle. But a bear's reproduction cycle is amazing. A female may mate with several males throughout the summer, and her territory may be 30, like I said, 35 square miles, but those males will find her. So she may mate with 4 or 5 different males that summer. But in the fall, when, depending on the mast, the nut, how well the oak trees have produced and the hickories have produced and the walnuts and the berries have produced, and all of the things that bears depend on to fatten up for the winter, depending on that, she will release, if it was a great year and the mast was great, there was plenty of acorns and plenty of berries, she may release 3 or 4 eggs to go to estrages to become baby cubs, which are born furless and blind, eyes closed, and furless, about this big. So, and her fat-rich milk and that's in January, her fat-rich milk in 3.5 months make those babies, 4 months, make them unhandleable by Game and Fish. So, so they grow quickly. And they will, so they're not true hibernators though. The biologists point out, they'll go in to tranquilize the bear, and the bear, it's real lethargic, its heart rate slows down, its metabolism slows down. Again, it doesn't urinate or defecate all winter. Will wake up. And one of the bear biologists, I heard a talk one time, he said he was crawling in the den, and they're like from me to here from a bear. All it would take is one swipe of a paw with claws on it this long to just behead that guy. And he said sometimes they'll wake up and they make this noise. I'm going to do it. I never do it except for the kids. But when bears are nervous, they blow and clack their teeth. So they'll go. I would be so out of there. But they, and he said they'll wake up and sometimes they look at him and he's looking at them, and the bear will just go like maybe if I don't see that thing, it won't see me. So, because they're so lethargic, so, everything is slowed down, their heart rate, everything. But anyway, he tranquilizes them. They pull the female out, they measure her, they push her gums up and try to measure the rings of her teeth above the gum line. That gives them her age, and they'll, measure, pull fur, DNA tests, and they'll get the cubs out, measure them, weigh them, and pull fur from the cubs. They used to tag them. I think it was red for males and yellow for females. I'm not sure. I do not know if they still do that. But I know a really good friend of mine just got to go on one of these trips. They drove about an hour and a half from Mountain Home, and she's been on the list to go on one of these trips for 10 years. They auction off at Ducks Unlimited and different events for $5,000, $10,000 trips to get to hold 2 baby cubs in your arms. She said it was an experience of a lifetime. And I can't imagine, you know, I'm gonna take you on and show you. So, and those are big enough to come out of the V. So, you know, they're older than the 4 months, or 4.5 months, that she's holding. The one, she sent me a picture, I'll show it to you as I'm packing up if you wanna see. It's on her shoulder asleep. And she's got another picture where she's holding 2 of them. But anyway, they just have an amazing reproduction system, an amazing abilities to smell and feed with that prehensile tongue. You know, they're just amazing creatures, and I am so proud to live in a state that realized how, I mean, when, and I hate to say it, but when a bear jits in the woods, it is an excellent seed disperser. Bears have an elongated digestive system, and I know I'm jumping all around here, folks, I'm sorry. I'm not used to following a PowerPoint. But, so, their food, you can, if you find bear scat, and I happen to have some, so, and I love putting this out for the kids because I lay it all out on a table and I tell them to go by and smell and touch, and they do, and it's rubber. And they go, oh God, that smells awful. Like, you know, I just let them go on. But so when you find bear scat, it's usually in big logs like this. But you can see everything, little insect legs and seeds in there. You know, maybe some fur, maybe they had a big meal. You know, so you can see everything in there. So they're excellent seed dispersers, and you know, it's part of the way it should be. You know, you've got to have that web of life and that food chain going down to make everything work in sync. I mean, they've proven it in Yellowstone with the introduction of wolves. That actually made the rivers more fertile and better. And that's a whole nother story. YouTube it, it's an excellent video. But anyway, it's just, I'm so proud to live and work in a state that did such an amazing reintroduction of an animal that was this close to being extirpated from the state. So anyway, and so should y'all. And you know, we just should be super, super proud to live in a state like we do, and have the habitat to be able to reintroduce these bears, and a management program to control them, kinda. That's all. Questions? I'd be glad to take questions. Yes.
I had found in an antique store a plate that had a, you know, it said Arkansas, the Bear State.
Yes.
Do you know when it was called the Bear? When I was going to school, it was the Land of Opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we were the Bear State when we became the Bear State. I mean, when we became a state in 1836.
1836, okay.
Somebody at work looked this up the other day. So we were the Bear State, then we were the Land of Opportunity. Somewhere in there, we were the Toothpick State. I was like, what? But anyway, I think that was short-lived, but we were the Bear State, the Land of Opportunity, and now we are the natural state. Yes, ma'am.
I live in Cotter, and in the first part of this month, the last of February, in that area, there was a mother and 2 cubs that went up the alley across the street from me and up on somebody's deck trying to get into their hummingbird feeders.
Right.
So,
How big were the cubs?
I don't know,
Oh,
but I have.
in the middle of February. February?
February, 1st of March.
Yeah,
So do they go
Yeah.
into town looking for food?
yes,
Or,
yes. And
that's not what I want.
And what I told you about, they're not true hibernators on those warm Indians, don't they call it Indian summer days in the winter? They will come out and forage for food. The cubs, if it was end of March, could have been of a size where, they went with her, but typically the female would leave them in the den and not, not venture far. But that could have just been, it could have been a lot of different situations. But that's possible. So they will come out of the den because they are not true hibernators. A groundhog or a woodchuck, you can pull him out of the den, put him in the car, drive him to Mountain Home, take him back to the park, stuff him back, and he will never wake up. But a bear would wake up. They are, yes ma'am.
We had one that got into we had one of those metal garbage cans where the lid's bit tight,
Yeah.
and it was bungee corded, and it got it out and ate the whole thing of chicken feed.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So, yeah.
We have a lady that works for us that lives down by the Buffalo, and they have that same problem with everything, from gardens to bird feeders to livestock feed. So it happens.
They come every fall. We get them
Yeah.
every fall.
Where do you live?
Fairview, down behind the Fairview Fire Department.
Wow,
Right.
that's kind of neat. I think it's
Yeah.
neat, guys. In the those yearling males, like I said, they can't stay with their mom. Once they become mature, sexually mature. So that's when we, since I've lived here, there's 4 or 5 have ventured into Bull Shoals, that 1800s village. He has some donkeys, and it was harassing the donkeys. I've heard of bears in Lakeview. So it's not uncommon, to see. But the, mortality rate, I didn't mention this, for the cubs is 50%. So, from car strikes to, if the female ventures into a male's territory with cubs, the male will kill the cubs to send the female back into heat so he can mate with her again. So, there's just all kinds of perils, from injuries or whatever. The mortality rate is high for cubs. So, but we don't, Arkansas has just been super, super successful. So much so that they're going into other states. And, people in Missouri are not happy about it. Whatever. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just for my own curiosity, the part that they set aside for bear population to begin with, is that by any chance the same part that the survey marker is in for the Louisiana purchase, where they started the survey for the purchase?
Well, we didn't really set them aside. That's where they ended up. You've been down there, it's a swamp. And down there, the bears don't hibernate in dens. They crawl down in those huge cypress trees. They will shimmy down. I was reading a magazine a few weeks ago when I knew I had to do this, and didn't have to, wanted to do it. And they had, it showed them winching these bears down a cypress tree, because they crawl down in there and trank them and pull them out, to do the same thing they do to the ones in the den. So they were like hoisting them down on winches, and the babies, they're packing down, with belaying down the tree. But so that area just wasn't probably conducive to hunting. you know, it was flooded, it's a swamp. They just happened to, I guess, get pushed, or that was the only place they ended up surviving, because nobody wanted to go there, you know? But yes, that White River Wildlife Refuge, and that was way before it was a refuge, you know, in the 20s, that's where they ended up. Any other questions? Guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.